Hello and welcome to the Geek Battle Gaming YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to smash that subscribe button. Today we are going to be doing a review of the PIKO Collection 3. Now, I was very lucky and I got sent the Team 17 Collection and PIKO Collection 3 literally a couple of weeks before they should officially be sent out. So thank you very much, Fun Stock. It wasn't that it was some special deal, I just got sent them early, which was great. Now, that means I get to review them a little bit earlier than a lot of other people, so do make sure you check out the other videos that I've got going up today where I will be reviewing Team 17 Collection 1. Also got one of this month's Game of the Month Thunderpaw going up, so just keep checking back to the channel, subscribe to make sure you see them all, and without further ado, let's get on with the PIKO Collection 3. Boom! The third PIKO Collection cartridge is now available on Evercade, and having had my paws on it for a few days, I've had enough time to dig into the 10 games that are on the cartridge to give my views on whether this one is worth picking up or whether this is one you may wish to skip. The games featured on the cart are 40 Winks, Legend of Wukong, Metal Mech Man and Mchine, Motor City Patrol, Punch King, Radikal Bikers, Stanley, The Search for Dr Livingston, Super Bubble Pop, Sword of Sodan, and Zero Tolerance. One thing I should note at this stage is there doesn't appear to be any bonus games if you plug this into your Evercade VS, along with the other PIKO Collection 1 or PIKO Collection 2 cartridges. Maybe there will prove to be if there is a system update that unlocks something, but as I was fortunate enough to get sent a copy early, I don't know if they'll provide any system update when the cart launches in a few days' time. I suspect that if there are any bonus games to be unlocked, it will happen at a later stage, if and when there is a PIKO Collection 4, and that the bonus games will work in carts in pairs rather than in threes. So 1 and 2 has a bonus, and then 3 and 4 would have a bonus. It's also worth noting that PIKO Collection 3 is just 10 games, whereas the first one has 20 games and the second one has 13. Together, they even give a bonus game on VS. Less games per cart has been a trend on the Evercade collections, but in case you're worried that this third collection is them scraping the barrel, I can reassure you that it isn't. So let's get into what games there are. Starting off with 40 Winks, as that is the game which I believe most people were hyped up for on this cart. The game is loads of fun. I believe I'm correct in saying that this is the first 3D platformer to make it to the Evercade, and it comes in the form of a game that was originally released on the PlayStation 1 back in the day, in about 1999 I believe. An N64 version was planned, but was never originally released, until it later got released only within the last 3 or 4 years, thanks again to PIKO. As the Evercade is all about that nostalgia fix, it's very easy to enjoy 40 Winks for a dose of that Banjo-Kazooie, Spyro the Dragon, Super Mario 64 feeling, even if this game doesn't quite match those games in quality. The game has this weird gobbledygook language which certainly is similar to Banjo-Kazooie. In the game, you play as one of 2 kids, Rough or Tumble, and you must save the Winks, which are these little creatures, from the evil Hoodwinks, if I've understood the story correctly. There's a weird guy which kind of looks like Ebenezer Scrooge, and he has a sidekick teddy bear, and they're the bad guys, yada yada. It's all kind of basic platformer fare. Mostly you'll run around as Rough and Tumble in their nightgowns, but at times you will get new costumes for them to wear that give you new abilities. It's a shame, as on the first level you get a jester costume, and then later on you get things like superhero costumes, caveman, ninja costumes. Not caveman ninja, that's a separate game. Caveman costumes and ninja costumes. But the point is, as soon as you get any of these, the game feels a whole lot more fun, because the characters can run faster, they can jump higher, they're a bit stronger, and it kind of makes you wish that you could just play as these versions of the characters the whole time. The platforming feels good, and it is so 1990s, but I say that as a good thing. It's fun to run around theme levels like haunted houses or water-based worlds and collect dozens of objects just for the sake of collecting. It took me a little while to get used to a platformer where you use the shoulder buttons to change the camera angle, as over the past couple of decades, it's always been the right control stick that did this function. You run around with a candle, which you can hit enemies with, and you can also butt stomp things as well. The game wasn't the greatest example of its genre back in the day, but it certainly stands out on the Evercade.
Always come along and put things right. They'd tell off the hoodwinks and chase them away. Like Mom.
Next up is The Legend of Wukong, which is a traditional RPG game, originally for the Sega Mega Drive, but I believe I'm correct in saying it was released only in China. The game received an English translation a few years ago, and it has found its way to the West. For full disclosure, I am only a few hours into this one, as the nature of RPGs being huge in size and often very grindy with random battles mean that I'll need to play this one solidly for the next week to get through it. Fortunately, I can once again make good use of the Evercade save state feature, and did so to make sure I could win a bunch of the gambling mini-games at the beginning of the game, so that I could quickly pile up a huge amount of in-game cash to buy all of the best weapons and armor straight away. Now, some may say this is cheating, and I'd agree with them, but in this modern day and age where you can get Evercade cartridges with sometimes up to 20 games at once, I simply don't have the time for all of these RPGs just to grind through them. The combat in the game does feel like one of the old school SNES Final Fantasy games, where it's turn-based combat as you go against random encounter after random encounter. I've not played a ton of RPGs like this in recent years. This is because I normally wouldn't have time for such an involved game, but I was mainly playing this one just so I could dig into it for this review, and I quickly found that it was getting me fairly engrossed with the combat and leveling up my party. So I'll probably keep sticking with this one and see it through for at least a little while more. The plot of this game is fun, as it is about time travel and seeking a lost time machine. The translation is also actually really funny at times, and I have to wonder if this is a true translation of what the game was originally, or if someone who ever worked on the game in recent years decided to make things a bit more quirky. It is funny though. Punch King is a boxing game which, just by its graphics and year of release, I take was originally a Game Boy Advance game. Yeah, this one is okay, but it didn't massively captivate me. The graphics are kind of bulky, and whilst better on the handheld Evercades, it is somewhat unsightly on the big screen. Gameplay-wise, it's all about looking out for the opportunity and getting the right timing to land punches. The animation of when you hit an uppercut is satisfying, but overall, the gameplay is okay, but isn't that memorable. I often felt like I'd press buttons and not get the action on screen for what I'd pressed. This quickly became a bit frustrating, as you end up mashing buttons, but that isn't the way to play this game. Super Bubble Pop is a surprisingly good match 3 puzzle game. As said in the info about the game, it was originally intended as a hair product tie-in, but it didn't relate to the product at all, and to be honest, I can't imagine how it ever could have been used to promote a hair product. The game is a little bit weird in its presentation, in that to show off some kind of 3D visuals, as you change your position to shoot the bubble, the entire playing field rotates back and forth a bit. There's no real reason for it to do this, but to make the graphics seem a bit more fancy, and if anything, it can make knowing where you are shooting the bubble slightly harder. One thing that I noticed after playing the game for a little while is it may be possible to do a perfect run of this game within just a few minutes. I say this because if you shoot the first few bubbles in a level in the optimum places, you will empty the playing field within seconds every time and end the level. Hopefully one day we'll get a Taito released cart for Evercade and it will have an actual puzzle bobble / bust a move game, but for now this is a fairly decent alternative. Stanley, The Search for Dr Livingston, I believe, is a NES era style action adventure game which most reminded me of Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. It mostly takes the form of a side-scrolling adventure game where you can go into towns and talk to people, but mostly do platforming and combat, punching snakes, using daggers on tigers, and attacking people who aren't depicted in a very PC way for modern tastes. Let's just leave that one there. You also collect some items which make your quest easier, like a grapple hook and a rope which you find in certain areas of the map. Now, there are these key items on certain levels, but you don't necessarily need to play every level. You move across a map in a grid kind of fashion, and so there are some areas where you can choose to skip. But here's the kicker, you don't know if there's going to be a key item there until you've already explored it. So the best bet is just to keep exploring. You are Stanley searching for Dr. Livingston after all. This is definitely one of the hidden gems on the carts that I really did enjoy playing a lot more than I was expecting. Speaking of hidden gems, Sword of Sodan is not one of them. Even Blaze are saying that the game is bad on their Facebook posts about it. They're going with the angle of it being for game preservation, and that makes it somehow worthy of inclusion. But the truth is, the collection is cheap enough that, I'll forgive them for including a stinker here or there. As a side-scrolling beat-em-up, this looks decent if you were to see it in still images. The animation of the main characters isn't very fleshed out, to the point that they don't even do a full walk cycle. Instead, they just kind of sidestep like crabs. The enemies come at you from both sides and are fairly relentless. In the end, I checked a long play on YouTube just to see how far I had got through the game, and saw that I had only reached about the halfway point of the game. That takes about an hour at most to complete. So I decided I wouldn't see it through. For what I did play, it was a save state party just to get that far. Making a game hard isn't always bad if it stays fun. This was both hard and not fun. Radikal Bikers is quite fun as a contrast to the last game. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of isometric style racers, but this pizza delivery sim, I don't think it's a sim, that's the wrong term, but this pizza delivery game thing, kind of like Crazy Taxi but with pizzas, and not really like Crazy Taxi, but that's still what you're trying to do on the game, is actually quite engaging with easy to learn controls, and that kind of I'll just have one more go kind of gameplay. Sometimes cars on the road can be a little bit annoying when you bump into the back of them, but unlike so many racers, this doesn't completely slow you down to a halt, and you can clip into the back of vehicles or kick off of other cars and still keep a decent pace. Learning the routes to pick up the bonus items and extra time is part of the fun and is somewhat essential to getting through some of the tracks. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it's also not that bad either. Motor City Patrol isn't the top-down original style Grand Theft Auto game you may hope it to be. That said, it's totally not that either, and I'm sure if you really believed hard enough, you could convince yourself that it was in that realm. Unlike Grand Theft Auto, this game puts you on the right side of the law. I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy this game. I found it confusing where you have to go a lot of the time, and didn't find that I was completing that many of the objectives. There is fortunately a map you can refer to, but this was only so useful when you have to refer to it so often. It's fun to be able to put on the siren and chase down cars off the road and take shots at enemies, but that is until you realise that you shot at an innocent car and then get told you are a crazy officer and get sacked. It tells you you were lucky to get sacked and not get prosecuted for shooting an innocent citizen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you should get prosecuted, and if not, then the guys in charge of the law are as crooked as they may be in real life. Metal Mech is better than Motor City, but it was another game I wasn't enamored with. It's cool at first as you go around in a mech robot suit that kind of looks like Ed 209 from RoboCop. This also means you're pretty much invincible that you go around in Ed, but here is where the problem kinda kicks in. The mech suit is really, really slow. Also, aiming and shooting is a little bit weird in this game. You can find at times that you can aim and shoot and move all at the same time, but as soon as you do this, you keep walking forwards even if you don't mean to. And that means you can shoot up and down, but you're definitely still walking forward. So then you just kind of have to stop shooting, and you can somehow make it so that you just hold still and shoot, but then you can't walk. It is just a little bit confusing because it didn't always work the way I was expecting it to every time, which is kind of the minimum of what you want for a game which is about walking and shooting. But then, here comes the twist. There are times when you have to get out of Ed 209. I'll keep calling him that even though he definitely wasn't that. It's just another case of a video game from the 80s or 90s just thinking, hey, that's a cool character in a film, we'll use that. But anyway, you get out of Ed 209 and run around on foot. This instantly makes you super vulnerable because everything can kill you, but at least you can move about quicker and you can jump and shoot faster than Ed can. The game is a bit of a slog if I'm honest, and as you're trying to get through it, it's not always clear what you have to do or where you have to go. Knowing when you should be on foot or in the mech suit isn't really clear either. So this is where I'd lean towards the save states so that if I suddenly find that I'm just on foot running around quite a distance away from the mech suit, I can just load back up to when I was in the mech suit and take it on a little bit further so that I've got both of my vehicle and my on foot persona together. With only 6 stages, the game can be blasted through in about an hour or so. In the final stage of the game, you do get an alternative robot to be in rather than just being in Ed, and it does change up the gameplay a bit. I didn't hate this game by a long stretch, but I also didn't love it either. Lastly, we're going to end on a high note. Zero Tolerance brings some first-person shooter action to the Evercade. Now, I'm guessing that most Evercade owners are probably people who may have played a lot of these games back in the day. But for any of you younglings out there, I'll warn you not to expect Call of Duty. Do not expect this to be Halo, Combat Evolved. No, this is in the oldest of old school style first-person shooter games. It's in the same style as Doom, Wolfenstein 3D and Hexen, but not as good as those. But that isn't to say it's bad. I loved this game when I had it on the Mega Drive back in the day, and I had a wave of nostalgia that most people will probably get if they ever played some of the very earliest first-person shooter games. The view of where you're going in the game is incredibly limited. You can maybe only see where you are going on about a third of the screen. The rest of the screen is filled with your weapons and ammo, a map of where you're going, and your character info. Like literally, their character's ID fills out almost a quarter of the whole screen. Now the reason for this is because the Mega Drive couldn't really handle showing the 3D levels in full screen mode, and so you just get a much smaller view. The draw distance is also very, very limited. The good news is that the on-screen map is super useful and makes navigating where you are going and even lining up shots to enemies a lot easier. It's almost a 2-screen experience on a single screen in this sense, and having the map visible just kind of shows how this game could have done well on the Wii U. There are a bunch of levels to get through, and at first you'll be shooting bad guys and later on you'll be shooting alien bugs. Fortunately, you get quite a lot of ammos and variety of guns. If you can, you should try to save your best weapons so that you can like take out all of the early enemies in a level and then just save the shotguns and the flamethrowers and the rocket launchers just to blast whatever's left at the end. It's a smart way of playing this game. What is the verdict? Should you get the PIKO Collection 3 cart? I'd give it a big yes. It brings 3D platformers and first-person shooters to the Evercade for the first time, which is a cool step into the mid-90s after all of the 2D games that are on the system. Early 3D games may not hold up super well graphically as 2D games often do, but there is definitely a place for them. The best games are Zero Tolerance, 40 Winks, and Legend of Wukong. Super Bubble Pop, Stanley, and Radikal Bikers are all also good games which are definitely worth a play, and you can have some fun with them. On the lower end of the scale, Metal Mech, Motor City Patrol, and especially Sword of Sodan are much weaker, but on a cart which is only around £17 brand new, that's about £1.70 a game, so that isn't too bad overall. So that's going to wrap things up here for this review of the PIKO Collection 3 on Evercade. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment to smash that subscribe button. Also going up today, we're going to have the Team 17 Collection 1 review, so please do check that out, as well as the review of Thunderpaws.